Volz. Please join us after service today in Curl 504, the interactive St. John's timeline activity. Marie is working diligently at that. We have some cards here we'll ask you to fill out about your experiences at St. John's so we can add it to kind of our interactive timeline. And hot cider, of course, and conversation. So we have a few announcements today. I don't know if Marie is close by. I don't see her, so I did give a little prelude to the activity in Clofifer. A reminder, we lost George Dersheimer recently, a long-standing member of our community, over 40 years and a past board president. His memorial will be held here on October 30th at 4 p.m. for those who are interested in attending that. Marie wanted me to remind everyone, it is in the email news as well. The weekly walk are starting on Monday at 1 p.m. This week, the weekly walk will be at Linder Park in Norwood. And please see the e-news for more information on that if you care to start doing that. It's going to be at a different park every week, so kind of take a look at that if that's something you enjoy. Nancy Johnson has an announcement to talk about the run walk for next week. Nancy?
Good morning. My name is Nancy Johnson. I'm here to invite you to participate, those of you at home as well, in the Matthew 25 Ministries Hunger Run Walk next Sunday here at church. We have fun activities planned for all ages, and you are invited to come in costume because it's Halloween next Sunday. Matthew 25 Ministries, which is located in Blue Ash, is a humanitarian aid and disaster relief organization that St. John's has supported for years. Their mission is to help the poorest of the poor and disaster victims locally, nationally, internationally, regardless of race, creed, or political persuasion. One of Matthew 25's fundraisers is their annual Hunger Run Walk. Their run walk is virtual this year, but ours is going to be in person here at St. John's next Sunday. We have 2 pedestrian-friendly courses planned, a 1-mile course and a 5K, which is 3.1 miles. We hope you'll register for the run or walk, whatever you want to call it, on the Matthew 25 website. It's $19 per person, and the funds help Matthew 25. If you register, they will send you a t-shirt like my husband Bill is wearing. Nice. But you can run or walk with us next Sunday, even if you haven't registered. They will not send you a pumpkin. If you don't want to run or walk, just come next week, bring a lawn chair, and hang out outside to cheer the runners and walkers on and help the kids decorate pumpkins. We'll start the service next week at 11 o'clock indoors. We'll have a 15-minute indoor service. Then we'll move outdoors, where we will have a costume parade for kids of all ages, small pumpkins for actual kids to decorate, and the run walk. Families and individuals are invited to bring carved pumpkins. That's why Bill has a giant pumpkin from home. And we'll put those on the bridle walk outside and vote for our favorite pumpkin. If you're only coming for the outdoor part of the service, come at 11:15. Dogs on leash are welcome. We will also be collecting donations for Matthew 25, including non-perishable food items, baby supplies, cleaning supplies, personal care items, first aid and medical supplies, school supplies, empty pill bottles, household items, new or gently used clothing, and used cans of latex paint that are sitting in your garage and you would like to get rid of. They need to be in their original paint can. They do not take furniture, electronics, or glassware. So please come, whether you're going to run or walk or just hang out. We will have fun. And I won't steal the order of service.
Marie, do you want to add anything to the interactive exhibit that I opened with it a little bit? Maybe you can explain a little more.
Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, I am Maria Nonley, the co-director of Religious Life here at St. John's. And this past week, I have been busy creating this historical timeline based on all the work that Debbie Combs has done in recent years and predecessors have collected over the years. So this is the official church history that is documented, but your stories are important also. So after the service beginnings in the sanctuary here, you are welcome to come to Kroll Pfeiffer, where there is a linear version, a 2D as opposed to a 3D version of the timeline on the wall near where the chairs and tables are stored. And you're welcome to look at that. And there will be index cards distributed at spaced tables with some different color pens, where you invited either to use the lines and write a few lines about a particular memory here, or if you'd like to draw a picture, you're welcome to do that as well. And it would be great if you both shared the memory and the date approximately. It doesn't have to be Tuesday at 2 p.m., but 1956 or something of that nature. So we really look forward to adding your stories to our timeline.
Marie, we can keep this up for a few weeks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This will be available. So you would need to leave right away or not comfortable in that space, you can take an index card with you and bring it back another week and we will add it to the timeline. And just one brief addendum to what Nancy shared about the exciting events next week. If you bring pill bottles, please make sure to remove the labels. There are some guidelines online about how to do that. That's really important and helpful so that people don't have to do that afterwards. Also, for the children that are here today, Amy is in the chapel and she has an activity for afterwards, and we'll be sharing a story for the children to be in the chapel while the adults are busy in Kroll Pfeiffer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marie. All right, now we'll do our chalice lighting. We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open mind. This is the church of the helping hands. This is the church of the loving heart. Together, we care for the church and each other. Now I'd like to ask you to join us in our affirmation, you at home as well. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands. Now we'll move on to stones and joys and concerns.
This is hi, I'm Mitra, I'm the Reverend here. This is a tradition that is unique to St. John's, where if you are new or if you are visiting for the first few times, you might not be familiar with this. This is where we invite you to choose a stone from the bowl of stones, and you'll find many unique, beautiful options, and place it in a dish of sand. Each stone represents a particular joy or sorrow on your mind or on your heart this past week. For those of you who are online, if you would like to put it in chat, we will make sure a stone is placed for you also. If you would like your joy or sorrow shared from the pulpit, please write it on a piece of paper and give that to me, and I will be sure to include it after we place the stones and light them. Thank you. I don't see any additional joys or concerns in chat, but I know that that doesn't mean that there are not additional joys or concerns in our community. I'm going to step down in just a moment and place a few more stones. One for the joys and sorrows that remain on our hearts and minds that have not yet found voice. And another for the Ashcraft family. Years ago, Lee and Jean Ashcraft were members here, and their children and grandchildren came to church here, and they have all moved away. Yesterday, we had a service for Jean Ashcraft. She passed she passed before COVID. But as I place these stones for them, I want all of you to know that your presence here matters, not just for today, but you are shaping a community and an ethos. You are shaping a way of being together that will carry on long after all of us are gone. So for the Ashcrafts and for all who have come before, I will place a stone of gratitude, and for all the unspoken joys and sorrows. Sterling, will you join me up here? Friends, this is St. John's Unitarian Universalist Church. What do we say when we have, like, a woman has like a name before a married name, like me, something else?
Yeah, it's her name.
Yeah, so like formerly known as St. John's Protestant German Evangelical Church. Like, we are a church with a long history. Part of that history has always included music and a dedication to music. In the 1860s, I believe, and Debbie will correct me, but I think it was in the 1860s, the minister took the hymnal and removed all the hymns that referenced God's judgment as being greater than God's love, and removed all the hymns that talked about the depravity of humanity. This was long before we were Unitarian and a century before we were Universalists. The ethic of everybody is welcome and God is good and love is real has been with us for a very long time, and it has found expression in music for a very long time. Over the past year, we have spent about $10,000 or more to work on the organ that's behind you. Some of that money has come from a music endowment fund that was set up in the I think probably the energy came in the 1930s because it was established in the 1940s, right? We have a deep commitment to music. I spent last night in Louisville going to an ex-ambassadors concert, which I loved every minute of, without exception. It was awesome. How many of you know who ex-ambassadors is? That's 2, 3. So they are just rock and roll. I mean, they're hot, right? They're hot. The band before them. The band before them had a drummer. I've never enjoyed drums such in my life. It was just amazing. Here's the thing, because I'm still the minister, right? I'm still Reverend Mitra, no matter where I go. So we know music can move the soul. We know music can stir emotions. Feng Cheng does a great job of that for classical music every week. And here I am at ex-ambassadors, and what every act was saying was that mental health is important. They were saying out loud to the audience, this season of COVID has taken a toll on all of us. Be sure to take care of each other. They were putting forth the gratitude that we could be together. They were very authentic, sometimes very raw in expressing our deep humanity, because that is what music can do. On this day, we are celebrating our past, our heritage, and that is very, very good. But we're also celebrating our future. Hi, Sterling.
Hi, Rita. Hi, everybody.
So Sterling introduced himself last week briefly, and he is our new choir director. And I called him up here because this is a time set aside for prayer. And I would like for you to receive this prayer. And I would like for you all to pray with me in a covenant of promise. All right? So will you join me in an attitude of prayer? Holy One of blessing, who moves in the space between the notes, who rises and falls on rhythms and meters of our lives. We name your presence with us. We know we are all part of a continuing story, and each of us has a role to play. We ask your blessing upon this congregation and upon Sterling as a leader of music in this congregation. Help him to help us bring forth the fullness of humanity, the most well-rounded nature of human spirit. Help us live into an embodiment of what it means to be empathetic, present, honest with our emotion. Help him to help us see that there is always more than one story. This world is complex, and at our best, we will move in a harmony that transcends all our differences and brings us into a more realized state of grace. We pray all these things as a people of conviction that together we are better than we are alone. So may it be. Amen.
Thank you.
So ordinarily, I would have us do a laying of hands on him because that's like a good way of blessing, but I'm guessing y'all don't want to do that in COVID time. So what should we do? What should we do by way of a blessing? There we go.
Thank you all so much. I'm really excited to be here, and on my journey and coming out of COVID and quarantining, I was really looking for a place where of like-minded people where I can also share maybe a skill that I have and my passion. I'm really excited to be here with all of you. Mitra has been so friendly and welcoming, as of many of you have as well. So if I don't get to see everybody right away or talk to you all, remember your name, I promise you I'll get there. But thank you all for being so welcoming so far. I'm looking forward to this journey together. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So our reading today is by Rachel Stone. And this article that she wrote is really about why ancestry is important. And she looks at it from a family perspective, right? Researching your family tree. But really, family is about community. And that's what we have here at St. John's. We have a real community of believers, and we believe in our justice, equality, and diversity. And keeping with that tone, I'm going to read her article, and I think it'll bring everything that we're talking about together today. The United States celebrates October as National Family History Month, and for good reason. Knowing, recording, preserving, and sharing our family histories can provide countless benefits to individuals, families, and entire communities. Family history is more than pedigree charts, censuses, and birth dates. It can be a powerful antidote against adverse life experiences that we face today, giving us a stronger understanding of who we are and motivating us to deepen our roots for generations to come. Knowing our cultural background and where we came from can help us develop a strong sense of who we really are. The way we relate to our family, stories, and create our own narratives about ourselves helps establish our unique, authentic core identity. Human beings desire attachment, belonging, and connection. The relationships we form with other people can be incredibly durable, not only with people in our present, but also with people in our past and future. The more we discover about our past, the greater a connection we feel to our ancestors. We record our own history, we open the opportunity for future generations to connect to us when we're gone. Learning the history of our ancestors helps us gain a greater understanding of the challenges they faced, and it often inspires greater love and compassion for their flaws and mistakes. This compassion can easily translate to our relationships with the living, within our families and outside of them. We all face hard things. Remembering the fact in context of others' shortcomings allows us to be better employees, managers, spouses, parents, children, siblings, and human beings. Knowing our family history builds resilience. In learning about our ancestors' lives, we can see patterns of overcoming failures and surviving hard times. Their stories remind us that surely not everything in life will work easily, that disappointments occur and inequalities exist, but that we can recover, triumph, and find happiness despite hardships. Our family history goes beyond the names and dates we find in our tree. It's about what makes us who we are. It's about people who lived and breathed and suffered and triumphed. It's about roots and branches and leaves and entire forests. It's about all of us. We'll continue with our offertory now. We have no split the plate today. And as you know, we're not passing the basket around, so please give as the Spirit moves you. And online at home, we have an online link for you to contribute as well. It's done before, we should have just figure out our because they were past the years. Really, that was fantastic. A people without knowledge of their past history, origin, or culture is like a tree without roots. That quote is from Marcus Garvey. We're all inspired to be retrospective at one point or another in our lives. Sometimes those visits can be a quick memory trigger. Sometimes this can be a quick memory trigger that comes completely out of the blue, or sometimes it can be quite intentional by sitting with a relative or a grandparent and talking about their lives. When I'm not doing IT work, I'm a genealogical researcher at heart. That is why it gives me great pleasure to introduce Debbie Combs this morning to lead us through our early St. John's ancestry. No one knows it better. Debbie.
Good morning. That was interesting to hear about your interest in genealogy work because I do the same thing. So you find out things about people you didn't expect. So when the volunteer position at St. John's opened up, I was thrilled. Jan Hay asked me to take this position for our 200th anniversary. And if you enjoy history, please join Patrick Leadham and me doing historical work at St. John's. Whatever interests, skills, or talents you have, consider sharing them. It's a wonderful experience contributing to St. John's in this way. Well, I'm not a professional historian, but a retired school librarian. I enjoy looking for information and discovering how one event has an impact on later events. That's how I look at our German heritage. How did we become St. John's Unitarian Universalist Church? When many of us think of St. John's German heritage, the church at 12th and Elm Streets and over the Rhine comes to mind. But St. John's didn't move there until 1868. So what happened before then that caused St. John's to locate there? So this congregation was organized in 1814 as a German-speaking church accepting both Protestants and Catholics. The German language was so important that it was written into the constitution of the church as the only acceptable language. During the early days of Cincinnati, the German community lived in the area around Lytle Park, where Old Fort Washington was located. Now, Lytle Park, if you don't know, that park is across the street from the Taft Museum of Art. If you start walking west and south from the park, you'll come to streets where St. John's original members walked. These streets would be Broadway, Arch, and Ludlow. If you're curious about locations of the congregation, see the display designed by Bo Walkendorf on the ramp into the chapel. It's right out here. And you'll find a map indicating all the locations. There were 2 church buildings in that area near Lytle Park. The congregation met in a 2-story wooden building on Arch Street between Broadway and Ludlow, where the floor collapsed during a debate over the need for a new building. The collapse caused the congregation to build a new brick church on 3rd Street between Broadway and Ludlow Streets. And that area is now off ramps from Interstate 71 and Fort Washington Way. By the 1830s, the congregation outgrew the brick building. They bought a larger building on 6th Street from the Episcopal Society of Christ Church. And if you eat at a restaurant called Akash India on 6th Street, you'll be in the location of that building. As you can tell, St. John's didn't simply spring up at 12th and Elm and over the Rhine. During the 1830s, 2 spin-off congregations formed with the liberal group remaining. The congregation was renamed German St. John's Church, dropping Lutheran and Reformed from the name, indicating the congregation wasn't affiliated with any particular Protestant denomination. The Reverend August Kroll became minister in 1841 while the congregation was located on 6th Street, and he was influential in St. John's growth toward Unitarian Universalism. This is just a little aside, but sometimes it's confusing that we have Reverend Kroll and Reverend Kroll-Pfeiffer. And Reverend Kroll-Pfeiffer was the minister in the transition leaving 12th and Elm and coming to Reeser Avenue. And our fellowship hall is named for Reverend Kroll Pfeiffer. Reverend Kroll was the minister on the other end. So he was there for the transition from 6th Street to 12th and Elm. And you can tell that Reverend Kroll Pfeiffer was very much appreciated by the congregation, otherwise they wouldn't have named the fellowship hall for him. It may not be so obvious about Reverend Kroll, but if you will go down the stairs to the library directly below us, you'll see a large plaque with Reverend Kroll's name, and it's in memory of him. And that large plaque was hanging at 12th and Elm Street, and it was moved here. So he was something else. But I want to tell you his immigrant story because it's just, I think it's interesting. Okay, he was the son of a farmer in the Grand Duchy of Hesse. His parents wanted him to be educated, plus avoid military service. He graduated in 1831 at the age of 25 from the University of Gießen, where he studied theology. He was appointed to the vicarage under Count Eisenhower. Reverend Kroll realized that since he wasn't from an aristocratic family, he could never rise to a higher level. He concluded if he wanted to achieve more, immigrating to the United States, where one man is as good as another, was the solution. Reverend Kroll left Bremen, Germany in 1834 with a group of 400 people. It was common for family and friends from the same village to immigrate together, maintaining the same customs and dialects. After some delays, Reverend Kroll and the group from Bremen departed for a 6-week voyage to Baltimore. Upon arrival, Reverend Kroll departed with a group of 75 people for Wheeling, West Virginia, on foot. From there, they took a steamboat to St. Louis. Reverend Kroll and his friend, Dr. Brule, decided to farm in Cape Girardeau County. After 4 years and the death of his friend, Reverend Kroll decided to leave farming and became the minister to a German-speaking church in Louisville. He stayed there for only a year and a half and then came to St. John's as minister to St. John's congregation in 1841. And he stayed for over 30 years, and that was our good fortune. When this congregation was first organized, only about 5% of Cincinnati's population was German. With the introduction of steamboats on the Ohio River, immigration increased. By 1850, German-born people made up about 25% of Cincinnati's population. During the 1830s, there were revolutions in Europe against conservative kings and governments. Failed revolution caused increases in immigration. The goal of the 1848-49 revolution was to create a unified Germany with a Republican form of government. That failed revolution was led by educated and liberal thinkers who immigrated to Cincinnati and other parts of the United States. So how did this impact St. John's? The congregation remained at the church on 6th Street until about 1866. Because of Reverend Kroll's liberal views, he attracted many new members and they outgrew the 6th Street building. Since the German community was moving to the area called Over the Rhine, the congregation decided on a new building at 12th and Elm Streets. Over the Rhine was a working-class German neighborhood developed as a result of German immigration in the mid-1800s. If you're not familiar with Over the Rhine, it's bordered on the west and the south by Central Parkway. And Central Parkway was the Miami and Erie Canal. When people crossed the canal, they said they were crossing the Rhine, referring to the river in Germany. Now, Reverend Nietzsche mentioned this, and I'm going to give you the quote from this hymnal. So Reverend Kroll created a hymnal for St. John's in 1869. And so I have one right here. This is about 150 years old. And I'm going to put this and a couple others in Kroll Pfeiffer near the timeline, so you can look at it if you want. And the following is written in the preface, written by Reverend Kroll. Jesus' teaching is, God is your Father. His nature and being is love. You are his children. Therefore, your life ought to be one of love, to love God above all things and your neighbor as yourself. This is religion. This is eternal life. In the spirit of this teaching, we have selected hymns for this book. It is self-understood that no hymns be included, which is in contradiction with that spirit. Excluded, therefore, is the theology of the traditional churches, which begins with the wrath of God and the sinful nature of man, and ends with the bloody atonement and the everlasting damnation of all those who do not believe thus. When I hear that, that makes me think of universalism. Now, Reverend Kroll was a rational Christian, meaning that Jesus was considered a man and not the divine Son of God. And when I hear that, then I think of Unitarianism. So my conclusion is that Reverend Kroll gave the congregation the foundation for becoming a Unitarian Universalist church. In 1884, the Reverend Hugo Eisenhower became St. John's minister. He was the first native-born minister, but his father, the Reverend Gustav Eisenhower, was born in Germany. The senior Reverend Eisenhower supported the German Revolution in 1848. His superiors at the church where he was the vicar felt he had too much sympathy with the freedom movement. He had been cautioned to tone down his sermons, but that wasn't in his nature. He wrote a poem in support of the freedom movement that was distributed as a flyer, and publicly read a poem written by a freedom fighter. He was arrested and charged on 2 occasions. In the end, he was fined and given the choice of imprisonment or immigration. Reverend Eisenhower arrived in the United States about 1850. I tell you about this because it establishes that our Reverend Hugo Eisenhower grew up in a liberal thinking home. The senior Reverend Eisenhower was minister of German United Evangelical Church St. Paul's, currently known as Tax Ale House. St. John's congregation met there temporarily the 2 years before the 12th and Elm Street Church was ready. And by the way, the St. Paul's congregation formed from one of the spin-off congregations of St. John's in the 1830s. So to put timing in perspective, St. John's didn't become a Unitarian church until 1924, almost 100 years ago. It was Reverend Hugo Eisenhower who recommended that affiliation. His ministerial training was at Meadville Theological School, established by a Unitarian. Another change that took place during Reverend Eisenhower's ministry was the move from German to English services. In 1901, church school began English-speaking classes at Reverend Eisenhower's recommendation. In 1912, he began alternating German and English sermons every other Sunday, and by 1918, all services were in English except when German was requested. And these changes were put in place to retain young people who were attracted by other German churches doing the same. So now that St. John's is located in over the Rhine, my story here, let's imagine Elm Street, starting at the corner of 12th, where St. John's beautiful German Gothic building is located. Directly across the street is Washington Park. So walking north on Elm Street toward Music Hall, you'll walk past 1213 Elm Street, the 4th building from St. John's. That's where Reverend Eisenhower lived. Those houses had no front yards, typical for that time period. The steps into the houses are right on the sidewalk. There was space behind the homes for flower and vegetable gardens. Because of that, German children played in Washington Park. Washington Park was the site of many German festivals. Concerts were held at Washington Park, some by musicians who had played at Music Hall or in the beer gardens and restaurants of over the Rhine. Families went to beer gardens to listen to German music. So this book called German Cincinnati, I'm going to give you a quote from that to give you a feel for what it was like. One cannot help but be impressed by the decency and good order with which so many of these places, particularly the saloons and over the Rhine, were conducted. People came to them to drink, to be sure, but they drank for conviviality, not for excess. The neighborhood saloon with its bar, its sitting room, its gardens, and its glasses of mild beer for a nickel brought people together and gave them a sense of belonging, of being part of a community. Clearly, beer was part of the German social life. You'll never see an Oktoberfest without beer. Beer brewing increased in Cincinnati from German immigration. From 1840 to 1860s, breweries increased from 8 to 36. During this time, about half the beer brewed in Cincinnati was exported, and the remainder consumed in this region. St. John's enjoyed beer drinking too. So I have a quote from the church council board or minutes. That's the same as our board of trustees. And in the minutes, it says, in 1881, the picnic committee was asked to purchase 50 kegs of beer at the cheapest rate. That strikes me as a lot of beer. So today, let's celebrate our German heritage. After service, we'll celebrate with cider, and most of all, enjoy our St. John's community, and we'll save the beer drinking for another day.
That was great. I think maybe a field trip to Washington Park, maybe the Taftdale House. And at the Taftdale House, Lisa's all for it. We could invite the choir to come up and sing a lovely German hymn for us today.
Taftdale House has great breadsticks. Great russet breadsticks. Our piece today is Die Gedanken sind frei, which is translated to freedom of thought, or thoughts are free.
Before we benediction, I want to take a moment one of the songs last night, again, the not church ex-ambassadors concert, was a song called American Oxygen, which the lead singer of ex-ambassadors wrote with and for Rihanna. It was a song talking about her experience as an immigrant and what that means to her. And you can find her version and their version online. But what he said very elegantly, again, at this concert, it was just a rock concert and not a thing of substance at all. Because he said we have very many different ideas about what it means to be an American. So I did not know that October was like genealogy month. It's also Indigenous Peoples Month. It's also, we have that Oktoberfest thing going on. There's a lot happening. What he said last night, which struck me really deeply because it was so simple, was that each of us have our own experiences of this country. And each of us have our own story to tell. There is no such thing as a single story, and there is no such thing as a simple story. I'm going to yield to Rita here in a second. Just please, as you go from this place, remember there is no simple story, but remember that your story really, truly matters. I encourage you to learn of it, to embrace it, and to share it.
I'm going to suggest that you close your eyes during this piece. It's a short prayer that we can kind of all get behind. I come to you humbly and with a grateful heart, my dear ancestors, to show love, thanks, and appreciation for laying the path for me and guiding me in the right direction. I thank you for your protection for me and my family, and for you interceding on my behalf in the toughest of times. I give you offerings to show my love and appreciation for your support, and I ask you continue to walk with me and guide me throughout my journey in this life. Amen. Make this the best week ever, and please join us in Crowfifer for hot cider and our interactive exhibit. And Kate. Thanks, guys.
Apparently we're still live here. That corner is what's being shown on screens, so that's us right now. We've actually kind of sort of definitely gonna be a little headphone.
It's all turned off. I left the meeting.
All righty.
Yep.
Should I go ahead and shut this down, even though it's still live?
Hey, folks. I hope that you'll stay for a visit. We transition from live service to virtual coffee hour, cider hour, if you choose, if you have cider at home in the spirit of today's service. Brian, you can go ahead and close down and make me the host if you wish. All right, then. So right in the middle of the service here in Northern Kentucky, where I'm sitting looking out to our backyard where it's a gray sky and I knew it was raining a little bit. All of a sudden, I had two dogs immediately here, like wanting my attention and wanting to be on my lap. And I realized it had thundered. I wasn't aware of the thunder, but they were. And they don't like thunder at all. And they expect to be cuddled and held and comforted whenever it thunders. So, and Kathy's at church, so I had to like somehow kind of make a spot for him on the floor. I couldn't hold them both in my hand. Bye, Brian. I couldn't hold them both in my hands at that time, so in my lap. So they're on the floor here, but poor little things.
Smart too, huh?
Poor little things. They do not like that thunder. Our fireworks. Not a fan of fireworks either.
Mine's not bothered at all.
Really?
No,
Oh,
not at all. No,
I wish.
I don't
I
know
wish.
what it is. Some animals, it's really bad.
It is. So David, you made some slime, did you? Are you still there, David and Aaron? Maybe they've stepped away. Hey, Carol.